All right, and now we head into the economic power. As you know, this has been a tradition for many, many, many years. Our wonderful Sonia Shore, she just does this magic where she finds very, very powerful women from around the world. How she does this, we all think that she makes it happen in her sleep. We do not agree that she works the same hours as us. She does not have the same amount of hours in the day as the rest of us. So we've concluded that to make ourselves feel better. But I, for me, economic power, I even stopped saying economic empowerment. I now say economic power has been such an important factor because in order for us to continue making a greater contribution in this world, financial freedom, the advancement of businesses, growing the economy and being participants of this economy as women gives us more ability to advance the change that we want to see. And I can't think of a better person to continue this tradition of women who are growing as leaders. And Sonia, please take it away. And we are all looking forward to the magic you're about to create.
Good morning, Solange. Thank you so much for your incredible leadership, for your dedication and commitment to your vision. It is such an honor to collaborate with you through Elevate International, together with the incredible board of directors that you have assembled in the community that supports you directly. Welcome everyone to our Economic Empowerment panel. It's an honor to join you. I serve as the Vice President of Strategy, Marketing and Communications for Invest, lead economic development agency here in Canada's capital for knowledge-based industries, and Bayview Yards, Ottawa's one-stop business acceleration shop. I am honored to host today's panel in close collaboration with two outstanding partners, Women in Automotive Technology in Silicon Valley and OceansAdvance, the Marine and Ocean Technology Cluster anchored in St. John's, Newfoundland. We know that COVID-19 has delivered a decisive blow to our global health and our global economy. The impact of the health and economic crisis, as you have heard today, is widespread. It impacts our entire population, but not everyone is fighting from a level playing field. Women business leaders, defined as all individuals who identify as women, particularly those with intersectional identities, have been disproportionately hit by this crisis. And this impact is attributed to the systemic inequalities and barriers women have faced for generations, compounded by the countless challenges induced by this pandemic. We have heard outstanding research conducted by RBC, delivered by our incredible champion, Marjolaine, who certainly is an outstanding leader for women right across Canada. Recent research from McKinsey Global Health Institute also underscores the devastating and disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on women. For example, it shows women's jobs are 1.8 times more vulnerable to this crisis than men's. Women make up 39% of our global employment, but account for 54% of overall job losses. If we fail to take targeted strategic action, global GDP growth could be $1 trillion lower in 2030 than it would be if women's unemployment tracked that of men in each sector. And taking action now to advance gender equality could be valuable, adding 13 trillion to global GDP by 2030, compared with the gender-regressive scenario we are facing today. This crisis creates opportunity for women decision makers and leaders in powerful industries to use their voice and drive strategic action to address gender inequality and help drive our economic recovery. The time is now. There is a unique moment in time where the world is watching and we cannot look away. During International Women's Week 2021, we are assembling leaders who are driving this critical change. And the executive North American panel we bring you today will provide inspiration and actionable insight with a focus on opportunities for women to catalyze the growth and performance of innovation-intensive tech industries and achieve increased impact during these unprecedented times. Economically empower current and future generations of women, help to build a diverse talent line for our tech sector and the many global industries and markets it supports, and take targeted action to drive gender equality and the recovery of our global economy. It is an honor to welcome 5 outstanding leaders from our region, from across Canada and across North America to our panel today. I will introduce them each one by one, and then we will dive right into these important questions. Ellie Ardekani, PhD, CEO, and co-founder of Meta Innovation Technologies and City of Ottawa Immigrant Entrepreneur Award winner for 2019, based here in Canada's capital. Moya Cahill, CEO and co-founder of Pangeo Subsea, based in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. Lisa Dolan, Vice President, Supply Chain Strategy, Alum Technologies in Fremont, California. My good friend Amy McLeod, Vice President, Corporate Affairs and External Communications, and based here in Ottawa with headquarters in Vancouver, BC. Also a Director of the Board of the Queensway Carleton Hospital. And Nina Kai, Chief Operating Officer for Voyage in the Bay Area in California. I could not be more honored to join this esteemed panel today. Welcome, everyone. To kick us off, we know the pandemic, as we have heard this morning, and so many other research sources over the course of the last many months, has had a disproportionate impact on women. We are facing unprecedented risk, with 1 in 4 women considering exiting the workforce or scaling back their careers significantly. As leaders in business and tech, why do you believe this is such a significant risk to our economic recovery and our economy more broadly? And what action do you believe we need to take to ensure more women remain key contributors to our workforce? Amy, you are right up in front on my screen. I'd love to open up with you for this important question.
Well, thank you, Sonia, and kudos to you and to Solange and to our dear friend Rima, who have been building this event and our community here in Ottawa and across Canada for years and years and years. And it isn't by hard work. And Solange was right. I don't think you sleep. So thank you for the opportunity. I'm thrilled to be part of it. It is staggering. The RBC numbers are staggering and they're sad. And it's kind of a wake-up call for the fact that I think the first thing that we need to be doing right now is some short-term corrective actions to stop the bleeding. 500,000 Canadian women who were working this time last year are not working now. And 200,000 of them have stopped looking for work. There is no economic recovery without them. It is not. It's not possible when you take that amount of economic stimulus out of the economy to get back to where we were this time last year. So I think one of the first things we have to do is as we think about economic recovery as a national priority, we need to think specifically about women's role, the role of working women in driving and stimulating that economic recovery and taking immediate action, A, to stop the bleeding, to make sure that that exodus is arrested, and secondly, to put in place steps and programs and strategies to re-engage those women who do want to be working, because I don't see how we get to economic recovery without them.
Thank you so much, Amy. Ellie, welcome to our panel. Can you share your perspectives on why you think this is such a dire situation and what you think we need to do to start stemming and stopping the bleeding, as Amy has just described?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Absolutely. First of all, it's an honor to be here with all the co-panelists, and thank you so much for the effort to put this panel together. I mean, it's been a really hard and tough period of time, especially for women in my industry. I come from oil and gas, so there were a lot of layoffs that happened during the period of pandemic, and it's continuing to happen as we are getting back to the pricing that is kind of economic for some of the organizations to bring back workforce. And I think one of the things that it's needed right now to push the reset button to make sure that when we are hiring back, when we are bringing back, especially the technical talents, we are bringing them back proportionally to create that gender parity within the workforce. I think the companies, especially the Fortune 500, they have a really good opportunity to do that. They have the economic, behind them to push them toward that goal to be able to bring back, an equal opportunities to the people who were laid off. That said, it won't happen without the sponsorship. It won't happen without someone internally supporting the cause. And usually that kind of, unfortunate enough, being among executives that are all women here on this panel, but majority of times those are mostly men sitting on the boards. We have to get them on board with us to sponsor this action.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ellie. Lisa, welcome to the first time, I believe, to Elevate International. We're honored to have you with us together with Women in Automotive Technology from the Valley. We would love to hear your thoughts on this very important question and what you're seeing, particularly in the United States in your industry.
Oh, thank you, Sonia. I'm so excited. Thank you, everyone, for inviting me to be a part of the panel. I also work in a very male-dominated industry. ALOM is actually a woman-owned global supply chain organization. We're heavy in automotive, we're heavy in pharmaceutical and high tech. And in the US, we're seeing about we know that 83% of all consumption in the US is in both in buying power and consumption made by women. And having women taken out of their jobs and having those economic opportunities, you know, it's been amazingly crippling for them. And so we're seeing in those industries hardest hit, women are in the retail and the hospitality. Retail actually was okay, but they're in the travel and the hospitality industry sectors. And that's where a lot of women gravitate to. And I absolutely agree with everyone who's spoken today during International Women's Day in that it takes a village, right? And it's got to be a two-prong approach. It's got to be education, and then we need economic stimulus and for the women to ensure that we don't take out the rest of our economy and that women have a level playing field moving forward.
We thank you for being a champion and leveling that playing field and joining us today. And also joining us from Women in Automotive Technology is Nina. She is leading in an industry we are very passionate about here in Canada's capital in the smart mobility industry. Welcome, Nina.
Thank you for having me. It's really an honor to be here.
We would love to hear your perspectives, particularly given the fascinating sector that you're working in, on what you are seeing and why you believe this is such a significant risk to our global economy, what you believe we can do together to make sure that more women stay engaged in your industry and the workforce more broadly.
Yeah, of course. So Voyage is a self-driving car startup. So we are heavily focused on backgrounds in AI, robotics, and working hard to deliver a fully self-driving vehicle. I would say, in general, I think we would all agree that what's good for gender equality is good for the economy and society. This pandemic has definitely been especially hard on women. In addition to what Lisa said about women being disproportionately affected because of the industries they work in that have been decimated by COVID-19, women are shouldering even more of the burdens of unpaid labor and just caretaker duties in general during the pandemic. So one thing that is a kind of immediate action that our industry has taken, specifically at Voyage, is just to introduce flexible work hours. We've been able to show that within the pandemic, remote work, flexible hours work, and people are equally as productive. So that's something that I very much hope on a micro level that companies continue to push forward for roles that make sense. But as we speak to the macro environment, we do just need to create the right environment for women to rejoin the workforce, whether that's continue to champion equal pay, creating policies that facilitate women joining potentially more recession-proof industries, flexible work schedules, better childcare just support, whatever. There's multiple different ways, but we definitely need to take action now to stop the potential economic impact that this would have in the long term.
I'm so excited to do that deep dive into what it will take to create that conducive environment. I could not agree with you more. Thank you for joining us again. Moya Cahill joins us from what I consider my second home, St. John's, Newfoundland. Welcome, Moya. We're excited to hear from you on this issue and on what you believe we can do to help more women stay contributing and driving to our economy and to your sector in particular.
Thank you very much, Sonia, and it's great to be here today from the east coast of Canada, from a cool but beautiful sunny day here in St. John's, Newfoundland, and to participate in such a great purpose for Canada and for women internationally. Certainly, I do agree, and I echo some of the thoughts that have been around the table so far today. You know, this pandemic has posed huge challenges to women who are, you know, juggling careers and family life. And, you know, certainly it's more prevalent for women to take on childcare responsibilities, but also to take on the responsibility of looking after their elderly parents. And certainly, I think we should look here in Canada for perhaps looking at best practices as in other countries with regards to, you know, for example, in Norway, I've spent a lot of time in Norway in my earlier career working in the oil and gas sector, and the Norwegians are doing some really game-changing initiatives to ensure that women can get into the workforce and be comfortable with regards to balancing that family and work environment. You know, I believe as a CEO, I have certainly a responsibility to lead by example, and certainly to provide my employees with that flexibility with regards to balancing that work. And I think we all have a responsibility to both family and work. And if leaders and company executives are more flexible, I know we can find a creative way to ensure more women remain key contributors to our workforce.
Thank you, Moya. Creativity and drive and passion that you all bring is so critical to creating that conducive environment. And you are all role models in your different sectors as recognized leaders who are truly contributing to the development of a strong and diverse pipeline of future women leaders. Could you describe some of the specific challenges and trends that you're seeing in your respective industries? Most, if not all, are which male dominated, as you have aptly noted, to the development, attraction, and retention of current and future women leaders. Lisa, I know that you were really passionate about expressing some of the trends that you're seeing in the supply chain industry. I'd love to start with you.
Yeah, what we're really seeing is that, you know, supply chain is increasingly reliant on new and emerging technology or the IT tools. And in Silicon Valley, it's really tough for ALOM because we're competing against, you know, for talent, for female talent, with powerhouses such as Apple, Google, Facebook, and we're all trying to fill these roles with talented women. And what we're finding is that supply chain positions are not really seen as exciting as the tech positions, right? Our positions require that employees are on the production line helping out. And so unfortunately, for a lot of what we're doing, we need that talent in-house. And so we can't have them work from home. And so what we're trying to do as an organization is broaden that exposure amongst women and starting even earlier, as, you know, Honorable Jean Augustine mentioned, it starts at a very young age. And so we are actively going out, we're speaking in schools, in colleges, and we're trying to change that perception for girls that, you know, supply chain and manufacturing and some of these traditionally male roles, there's tremendous opportunity for women. And it's just as fun as some of those other things that they might have been gravitating towards, you know, and again, making sure they have those opportunities from an educational standpoint.
Fantastic. Education throughout the entire process, from kindergarten up through post-secondary, is something I
yes, and it's huge. And that's what I loved about our ally Michael, right? Is that he's a dad, and he's, yes, I need my daughters, and it's, you know, it's at the dinner table. So
inspirational teachers and role models along the way. And here in our region, Amy, you are a true role model. Sincere congratulations on your recent award, my friend, as well as a leader who has built a career in the technology industry and now with AdVance. I'd love to hear some of the trends that you're seeing in the marine and shipbuilding industry.
Thank you, Sonia. I mean, it's very similar to what Lisa was just talking about. I am in the shipbuilding and the marine industry. We literally build ships, principally for the Coast Guard in Canada and for the Royal Canadian Navy. So big manufacturing based work, engineering type work, skills, trades, all of these things that have historically been male dominated. I would say that there's still a lot of work to do, heavy lifting, to get young women, young girls in school to look at these careers. These are well-paid, high-skilled jobs. They are transferable from industry to industry. They are time bound. They are, you know, for those of us who struggle with balance in their work and their life, these are jobs that you go to and you leave at the end of the day and then you come back to. So there's wonderful balance in that. There's leadership opportunities. They lead to financial independence. It's the total package. We just don't have enough young girls who can see themselves doing this type of work yet. I have a 16-year-old, grade 10. She's probably going to not like that I'm talking about this, but you know, at this time in grade 10, they start to put, you know, we start to talk about post-secondary, what are your options? And we've encouraged her to go to all of them. We went to an apprenticeship-based program last week. She was one of the only girls there. And it's, you know, we need to just broaden the horizon and make sure that girls are thinking of those types of jobs, separate and apart from COVID, as great career opportunities. Welders do very, very well. Electricians, you know, it is an incredible opportunity for young women to take these trades and take them in their journey forward. And they are in high demand right now. So that's just some of the fundamentals we still have to keep working on, separate and COVID.
Amplifying those incredible opportunities and demonstrating how they can add value throughout the entire career journey for young women is so critical. Yeah. And I know that that's a passion that Ellie shares as she is building her startup, her AI-based startup targeting the oil and gas industry. Ellie, you have also just opened the Ottawa chapter for Women in AI, and we're together tomorrow on a panel that targets how women scientists are driving forward in AI innovation. What are some of the trends and challenges you're seeing? Clearly, you're a champion committed to this. What is your experience in this?
I'm really in agreement with Amy. I think there are some of the changes that are happening within the ecosystem that are great for representing women and showing the younger generations that are coming into technical skills, and especially STEM related. You know, I'm a geophysicist by training. I have a PhD in geophysics, and I love science. But at the same time, I love the business side of things. So creating opportunities for, you know, people who are coming into STEM and showing them, hey, there are more ways that you can actually use your talent and your education to be able to drive economic value to the ecosystem and build opportunities and be part of the conversation. There are so many opportunities out there. And encouraging them and bringing them into the conversation, that's part of the way. And, you know, you mentioned Women in AI. Women in AI is an organization based in Europe, and they have thousands and thousands of followers. And, you know, to me, this year is the beginning for Ottawa to be part of all these efforts that are happening globally, everywhere, in every single city and country, to educate people about, you know, emerging positions and opportunities that are coming up in the AI field, because it's not going anywhere. We're just starting. So I think that's a really big factor. And I honestly think that one of the other things that, especially for Ottawa, you know, we're pretty much the leaders in terms of, you know, the startups that are coming up into the region, and they are moving up very quickly. You can see the AI startups that are coming into the ecosystem, and they are supported by, you know, angel investors and VCs to be able to take them to the next level. I think that is kind of fundamental for making sure that, you know, women have a seat on the table as founders, as CEOs, as co-founders, to be able to attract more women to these industries. Because tech is not doing much better than oil and gas. Like, we are still minority within any of the industries that you're looking at.
Not agree with you more, and I'm honored to have come together with all of you in what is truly a global panel representing many different sectors, because this is a global challenge and a global crisis that we are facing. And as leaders, you are all taking action to help address and build this pipeline. Nina, I know that we've chatted as we led up to the panel about some of the action that you're taking within Voyage and that you're seeing within your sector. Perhaps you can describe some of the solutions or innovative approaches that you're taking within your sphere of influence.
Yeah, sure. So like Ellie said, the tech industry, and then to some extent, the surrounding ecosystem, like the venture capital community, continue to be very male dominated. And I would say it's very much even more pronounced in AI robotics. A few years ago, when we were all still attending conferences in person, think there was a study that sampled 3 AI conferences from machine learning and machine vision and found that 88% of the researchers were men. So education definitely is the start. But specifically at Voyage, we strongly believe talent is everywhere. So to that end, we've done a few different things to try to attract talent. For roles that can be done remotely, we're open to hiring talented individuals all over the US. And to some extent, we've even made accommodations for international hires because we want the talent. We don't necessarily focus on educational background or industry-specific experience. In fact, a lot of times our recruiters do not look at names to be able to remove that bias. We just want to hire folks who demonstrate a track record of collaboration and delivering results. And although there are specific roles in self-driving companies that do require some background in certain educational background and certain experiences, there are just a lot of general software engineering roles that does not require someone to have experience in self-driving. And for those, we are willing to tap experience for all different types of industries. And then I think the last thing that felt particularly pronounced during the pandemic was really encouraging flexible work hours for all employees to meet the needs of their family. So again, the burden is not disproportionately felt by women. And we've actually seen this play out in our company where fathers are taking more paid family leave, fathers are taking just more time off, and just helping distribute the burden that's historically been felt by women. In the US, at least 75% of caretakers are women. So it's especially pronounced when, due to COVID, children are still home and maybe cannot go to school. So we found all those approaches definitely increase the diversity of our pipeline, not just for women, but also for different backgrounds, people of color. And it's generally been a very valuable tool for us to recruit. And I would say this actually gives us probably a broader scope of candidates to look at. As a smaller company, you always have to find ways to be competitive with, the likes of Google and Apple and Facebook. And being more flexible in backgrounds, work locations have really given us an edge to be able to hire folks that otherwise we may not be as competitive with from a salary or from just a name recognition perspective.
You are underscoring so many themes that we have discussed here in Canada's capital throughout International Women's Week. And a really important one is don't count yourself out. Have the confidence to reach out and engage those you trust in your circles, in your networks. You don't have to have every single skill and attribute when applying for a position, such as those that Voyage is promoting. Go and actually engage, listen, and learn, and have the confidence to go forward. And Lisa, I know that we've had many chats as we led up to today's panel on very similar themes with respect to some of the strategies you're implementing with Alum. Perhaps you can elaborate on a few of those for us.
Absolutely. But before I do, I want to point out that we all need in every country more CEOs like Nina and Alom's CEO, Hannah. Having women role models is amazing. And I love what you're doing, Nina. At ALOM, we're super passionate about educational and equitable opportunities and exposure for girls, especially when we promote STEM and early education, as I mentioned a million times. And like Ellie, I'm a programmer by education and then stumbled into supply chain. I had no idea that that field was even out there, so I was super fortunate. And so one of the things that we're doing as a company and our leadership as a whole is we're going out and we're speaking and promoting STEM in early education. And then we took another approach, which is we became very active in the National Association for Manufacturers. And every year we host an on-site manufacturing day for high school and college students each year so that they can come in and explore, how things are made, because we're physically making things. And just to watch those students' faces light up and they went, wow, we had no idea that this could happen. And so bringing those girls in and showing them, hey, this is fun for us, it's hands-on and it's actively going out, grassroots, feet on the ground opportunities at showing girls where they can go.
Experiential learning is so incredibly powerful, and I commend you for taking such a targeted approach to bring young women into this important sector, particularly when we look at the critical role that PPE, for example, and so many other supply chains are playing in today's current economic and global health crisis. So we've done a little bit of a deep dive around some of the solutions that you're each implementing. You're also very nationally and internationally active, every single one of you in your sectors and in your spheres of influence. What are some of the key learnings and new approaches or ideas that you see emerging from the pandemic, from either in your region, across the country, around the world, that you think we could adopt, perhaps tweak, that would create that more conducive environment to helping women grow and thrive professionally? Moya, you opened up with some great statements with respect to your experience in Norway and what you're seeing as a globally oriented company headquartered in Newfoundland. Perhaps we could ask you to kick us off in this important topic.
Sure, no, I'd be delighted. And, certainly we've, from my perspective, I've been in, the engineering, oil and gas, now offshore renewable energy sector for some 30 years. And, we've come a long way, believe it or not. And certainly now, we're involved in ocean tech. And I believe that ocean tech is doing a pretty good job with regards to attracting and retaining women. But, it really falls back to certainly what we have learned from this pandemic is how we can actually work from home. So we have a lot of geoscientists, we have a lot of engineers and technicians, certainly recognizing that some folks do have to be in the office. And so we try to accommodate that and trying to certainly encourage others to stay home and work at home where they can. And but I think it's really important at the end of the day, globally, that, we have to show by example. We have to certainly lead by example. And that is something which I think is very, very, very important. And within our organization, we do have, a lot, we have, though I'm not responsible for the hiring, we do seem to have a lot of gender equity. And whether it be, and we're sending teams offshore. And I reflect back at my time when I was working with the Canadian Coast Guard. Or I remember I was asked to leave the drill floor because I was considered to be a risk to safety. So those days are over, thank heavens. Though I do appreciate that there are other sectors that are still struggling. But I think, as we mentioned earlier, it's important to really provide that, that leadership and that example, and expose it to the children in the early days.
Thank you so much for your leadership. I am so passionate about the potential for the marine and ocean technology sector. As I say, I believe somewhere in a previous life, I've actually had this opportunity to engage in this sector, and it's a pleasure to collaborate with you and our friends at OceansAdvance. And it's a great segue to Amy, who is a leader in the shipbuilding industry. I would love to hear from you, Amy. We've talked about this need for more new and novel approaches to make it more conducive for women to thrive professionally. We'd love your insight on this too.
Yeah, I mean, just to sort of see the other half of the discussion, I opened with sort of the devastating numbers that we've seen from the pandemic as it relates to women in the workplace and women who are leaving the workplace. But if we look at the glass half full side of the equation on that, the business case for remote working or flexible work arrangements been unequivocally made in the last 12 months. People working remotely, working from home, flexible schedules, there's nothing left to prove on that front. And it wasn't, it's hard to remember how we did this 12 months ago, but we didn't instinctively think that it was okay to work from home. There were questions about productivity and efficiency and output. And I think that what the opportunity ahead of us is, there will be, I hope, and should be, progressive, forward-thinking organizations who see that change in the dynamic as a tool to do exactly what Nina was talking about, which is to recognize that talent is everywhere. And in a climate, and it was like this before COVID, I think it will be like this after COVID. The dynamics that everybody's on the talent hunt and resources are scarce, and that women especially are always looking for that elusive, I want my career, but I also need to balance that with everything else I have to do in my life. if you can look at that supply and demand dynamic and put it in context of how a flexible work arrangement can attract women to your organization to meet your needs, I think there's something really profound in that. And it's, I love the discussion. It was Nina that said talent is everywhere. You can broaden your horizon now because technology is enabling us to find folks wherever they are and to enable them to join our organizations wherever they are. And I do think that we will see some early leaders who, take that where it's going to go in terms of defining their brand as female friendly or a place where women want to work. And then we'll see a lot of fast followers after that. So I think that's something that I'm anxious to see, and perhaps a silver lining from all of this.
Amazing. I certainly resonate with that opportunity and thank every leader here for seizing that opportunity and driving forward on that action within these very male-dominated sectors, creating more opportunity for women. You are all accomplished and recognized industry leaders, and really through International Women's Week, we've been striving to have very authentic, open dialogue that allows other up-and-coming and aspiring women leaders to learn from every type of experience that you encounter. I would love to hear from each of you about just a couple of the hurdles or the stumbling blocks or barriers that you've encountered in your leadership journey and how you overcame them. And Amy, you're still on my screen, so perhaps we'll start with you and then work through our panel.
So thank you, Sonia. Yeah, it's funny. I'm 30 years plus in my career now, and I wish I knew now I wish I knew when I started what I know now. And there were many times where I was marginalized or diminished in a meeting and did or said nothing. And I loved what the prior panelist, Michael Anderson, said. Women today are not putting up with that. They are impatient. They have found a voice that I didn't have 30 years ago. They are really setting the expectation for what they want from their workplaces and what they expect from their workplaces. And I'm just like incredibly inspired by that, because I didn't do that myself for a long time. And I think that the women that I talk to in my cohort, it's almost a shared experience. We sometimes sat silently and didn't do or say anything when we were feeling uncomfortable. And I'm so inspired by that change that's organically happening now, and conferences like this and encouragement like this only makes that easier. I think let's do more of that. Let's all just get comfortable with saying, no, that's not right. That's kind of my reflection on this question. It's the things that I didn't do as a young woman in the workplace that I do now, that I wish I hadn't taken 30 years to kind of get comfortable with.
Thank you so much for sharing, Amy. Nina, we would love to hear from you on your journey and some of the stumbling blocks, hurdles you've overcome.
Yeah, I think it took me a while to find my voice as a leader. I was in the financial industry before joining the tech industry, so two very male-dominated industries. So there's generalizing a little bit, there was a mold of what a leader looked like. And a lot of the performance reviews I got over the years were pushing me to be in that mold. And I think it took me a really long time to feel comfortable with what I like to do, what my personality is like, and how I would communicate with folks. And I think over time, it just became more acceptable to create a more distinct persona or more different personality and voice as a leader. And I very much hope that me being at a C-level position opens up more opportunities for other folks who realize that you can be a different type of leader. I would say one thing that I did want to address, because my friends and I talk about it a lot, is just this idea of imposter syndrome. And I feel like that potentially maybe felt more pronounced by women, even though I can tell from conversations from male mentors that everyone feels the same way, right? But the idea that you don't belong definitely can be more pronounced when you're the only one that looks a certain way in a room. But rest assured that you are not alone, and everyone else is just figuring it out along the way. And some people just hide it better than others. And I think it's one of those things that over time, as I've learned that to be the case, made me more confident and more assured in my decisions, my opinions, and just generally what I viewed as what it takes to be a good leader.
Imposter syndrome has been a key and dominant topic throughout the entire International Women's Week. I know that your insights are resonating. I'm seeing the chat box lighting up. Moya, I know that you have also spoken to some of those similar challenges and hurdles, and certainly a leader in the sector that you are in. We would love to hear about some of your stories and how you've shattered those barriers.
Thank you, Sonia. And, you know, I refuse to acknowledge barriers. I'm determined. I'm persistent, and certainly I see any stumbling blocks placed my way as opportunities to really strive for increased success. You know, we opened up an office in the Middle East, and you know, where I was working with ExxonMobil, and they said, "Well, Moya, how are you going to get over here?" And I said, "Look, don't you worry about that. You give me a contract, and I'll make it happen." And you know, I think you've got to really look beyond the barriers for success, and if you see them, go around them, and don't be focused or get too focused about your gender. I mean, I never looked upon myself as being a female in the industry. Recognize that there were a lot of men around me, but I took that as an opportunity to communicate, to network within the community, to rub shoulders with as many people as I could, to ensure that I could push through any barriers that came my way.
The concept of fellowship and that peer support as you work through your journey has also been very, very powerful over these last few days. The opportunity to find those networks and the opportunity to identify a mentor is something that has been very pronounced in our dialogue over the last few days. So I could not agree with you more. Ellie, you are building a tech-based company here with us in Ottawa. We are so proud to collaborate with you at Invest Ottawa. Tell us a little bit about some of the barriers that I know you've broken because I've watched you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree with Nina and Moya. I can't agree more. You know, I'm a woman of color. I'm an immigrant. I'm Middle Eastern by ethnicity, but I'm building a business here in North America. And you can imagine there are so many stakeholders within building a business. It's not just the clients, not just the customer. There's also all the supporters, like the ecosystem that need to support you to get where you're supposed to be. And I mean, I'm not going to lie, there are times that, you know, as a woman of color, you feel lonely, and you feel like you're struggling because you're talking to, you know, a board full of men that usually, at least for my industry, for oil and gas, are white, middle-aged men. And that's how it works, and I look weird to them. But as you work through all these stumbling blocks and through these feelings, you get more and more confident, and that's what happened. The same thing I would tell to anyone out there who is in my position or who wants to be in a better position in the future, is that exposure matters a lot. So the more you expose yourself to opportunities, to networking opportunities, to talk to people, you learn more. And to be honest with you, diversity comes from inside us. Sometimes we look at, you know, around us and you see these, you know, we're in some sort of a, you know, not a cage, but like we have some restrictions in our head. Hey, I'm a woman of color, I'm different, I look different, I act different, I have an accent when I speak English. But to be honest with you, sometimes we just need to brush it up and say, I am who I am, and this is what I want to do, and I'm going to do what it takes to get to the point that I want to be. And this is my advice to all the women out there. You know, the theme of International Women's Day is choose a challenge. And yes, we have to choose to challenge the status quo, but we also have to challenge our comfort zone and do the things that are beyond our comfort zone to get to use our gender as an asset and not as an obstacle.
We are so proud to support you at Invest, Ellie, and the female founder and women-owned business strategy that we developed maybe 2 years ago now with a subcommittee of our board. It is to help empower and equip women leaders and founders and entrepreneurs just like you. Thank you for being a role model in our community and for so many. Lisa, you are in the supply chain management industry, and I know that you've chatted with us leading up to the panel today about different barriers that you've personally faced. Perhaps you could share one of your stories that would inspire our audience.
I have been very, very fortunate in the fact that I now work for a woman-owned company. And that is not by any, I chose to do that at that point because I had the experience of being, again, in a very male-dominated industry, coming in, having to prove myself. There weren't a lot of women programmers back in the day. At least that I was given an opportunity to be with. And I worked for a company in Silicon Valley that was actually a Korean-based company. And being a woman in a male-dominated industry at a company that was also very male-dominated, there was one woman who was in a management position at that time. And she ended up, she was the chief marketing officer. Everyone else in the organization was male. And I had to work harder, put the time in, and then I just got tired of fighting. And so at that point, I started to look out, around my network and say, okay, who is really trying to make some change, and who do I really want to align myself? Who has the values that, I can align with? And I was fortunate and found ALOM, a woman-owned company. At the time, it wasn't a woman-owned company, but Hannah Kane was the president of another smaller supply chain company. And then she decided, hey, I could do this better, and started her own. And 25 years ago, I moved over with her, and it's been amazing ever since. So I tell women, look at what you want to be in, the environment you want to be in, and make it happen. Take a risk. Women tend to be very risk adverse, and we can't afford to do that anymore. We have to go for it. Men don't think twice about what they're doing and where they're going to go. If they want it, they go for it. Women need to do the same.
Think big, be bold, and be brave. I absolutely love it. And we need that bravery to drive the dial at the C-suite and the executive level. Women remain drastically underrepresented at the highest levels of leadership in both the corporate and economic sphere. Just a little bit of data to underscore this. Analysis by the Globe and Mail shows just 4% of companies on the benchmark stock index here in Canada have a female CEO. DDI's global leadership forecast, women only account for 21% of early executives. And when we look at governance in Canada, only 17% of board seats on TSX listed companies are held by women. In the US, it's 23%. Numbers of color remain even lower. They're almost minuscule. This is something that absolutely must change. If we are going to drive this dial, we need more women at the utmost upper levels of these organizations, driving wealth creation with influence to make those decisions and create the pipelines for future women, driving that future opportunity. How do we move the dial on this, my fellow leaders? How do we make this critical change happen faster, particularly now that it's more important than ever? Lisa, you're still on my screen, so I'm going to invite you to weigh in first.
Absolutely. I firmly believe that change happens from the top down. So if we want more women in the C-suite, we got to get more women on the board, because the board pushes it down. And we've been fortunate in the US. Some states are actually mandating and bringing this issue to light, that there needs to be more women on the board. The boards need more diversity. And there's actually advocacy groups, sorry about that, such as How Women Lead, that are helping prepare women for their seat at the board. And like Moya said, sometimes you got to fake it till you make it, just go for it. Don't worry about it. I'll get there. Women need that attitude, and they need the networking. And it's going to take advocacy groups like, How Women Lead, where they're really pushing it, is finding those male allies, because, the board seats are done through networking, and it can't be just the old boys network. We need to get in there and start networking with them and showing the boards that we're ready and we can do it. And then we can start to advocate for change in the C-suite within the organizations that we're leading.
There's so many organizations here in Canada as well, driving to change that governance style and get more women leaders on boards. I would love to open up to one of my Canadian colleagues to maybe provide a little perspective on some of those drives, on those ambitions, and what it will take to bring more women into the C-suite. I'm going to open this up to anyone that would like to weigh in on this important topic. And there's Moya.
Well, I certainly know that if I reflect on what's happening here on the East Coast with the oil and gas sector, certainly I know operators like ExxonMobil, Husky, Suncor, when we're looking at expressions of interest and RFQs, they're actually, they will monitor, they're monitoring your gender equality within your organization. So you have to demonstrate to them how you're contributing to that balance. So I think, setting that up and instilling it in a procurement process, that's a good beginning.
Establishing targets, what gets measured gets done. And so very grateful to hear that there are organizations in your sector that are championing that change. I think, Amy, you were looking like you might have wanted to weigh in on this as well. So you're a big champion for women at this level.
Thanks, Sonia. And just echoing what Moya just said, that we're seeing systemic change in the macro business environment. For publicly traded companies, to go to your annual general meeting without a statement of gender equality or data or what you're doing to drive your numbers in your organization and at the C-suite is a really difficult thing these days. The pendulum has swung, and so there is an expectation from the shareholder community and those that finance the shareholder community that gender diversity is going to be embedded in your organization. It is becoming a follow the money type thing, which sounds horrible, but is actually a lever that we can use. Secondly, exactly what Moya said, we're starting to see requests in major infrastructure RFPs asking for details on what is your corporate position on diversity and inclusion. Tell us about the number of women in your organization. What are you doing to advance? You're starting to get that as a condition of competing for business, which is, again, it's structural at that point. So we're starting to see that, how fast that drives change or the data we'll see. But those are really powerful indicators that something is different. I always think in terms of, I often think in terms of fast followers, early leaders and fast followers. I want to say 2 or 3 years ago, Microsoft, one of the biggest supply chains in the world, we were just talking about supply chain. In order to be in Microsoft's supply chain, you needed to provide a certain amount of maternity leave for your employees. So it's Microsoft telling Amy McLeod, if you want to be in my supply chain, your employees, Amy McLeod, must have access to maternity leave. That drives change, right? When you find those early leaders, that's going to drive behavioral change. And so we're starting to see that. Never fast enough, never with the results that we want soon enough, but we're starting to see it. And that's a change, I would say, in the last 5-6 years. So that's optimism for me.
Completely agree. Drivers to accountability with an actual in association with the business opportunity that you have the potential to secure. We need more of those leaders, and we commend all organizations who are building those accountability statistics and metrics into their business opportunities. We have about minutes left, and I definitely have 2 last questions that are both very important. We know marginalized women from priority equity groups are among the most impacted during this pandemic. And we also know that diversity, inclusion, and belonging are key drivers to enhance performance, productivity, and profitability. The gaps and challenges, despite this, continue to increase. I open this up to any one of our panelists. How do you believe we can create a more inclusive recovery, as Marjolaine was advocating, and a diverse pipeline of top women talent for tech and all the many global business sectors that you support during these unprecedented times? Such a critical change.
Yeah, so I mean, that's such a critical thing to talk about, and it's very challenging. It's very challenging, and it's not easy to overcome. But I think one of the things, as a professional, I am a licensed geophysicist, so I hold the license to practice geophysics. And I think as a professional, we do have access to professional societies and communities that are associated with the fields that we are really good at. And those professional societies are self-regulated. They are non-for-profit. They are there to serve their members. And I think if you look to those professional societies, they can provide a lot of leadership in terms of how they can actually deal with this gender diversity, and like how they can actually deal with, especially for marginalized, ethnicity groups, because they are the people who are out there recommending, representing those professionals. And I think there was a time that, Moya was talking about Exxon and Husky. There was a time that those companies were looking into these professional societies for hiring. And I think professional societies have a really, key aspect into this whole play. And for us as women, especially the women who are coming from, minority groups, it's really important to be involved with these sort of societies and actually try to move the needle even in those societies before we actually get to the workforce. There are a lot of work that can be done through those societies. And I think they have the key to the better future in terms of gender diversity. They can help, absolutely. But also the companies that have the power to be, the leaders, the 500, S&P, those companies have the resources to be able to drive change. And I hope that we see that more within those companies.
A critical mass leadership with large established and recognized organizations setting the pace and driving the change. Absolutely critical. Thank you, Ellie. As we enter the last 5 minutes of the panel, I would love to hear from each of you for 1 minute on what is your vision for the future. One key takeaway or recommendation that you would like to leave with our audience who can help drive the change that you see in that future, who are committed to creating gender equality and driving the recovery of our global economy. Ellie, you are still with me on the screen, so I'd love to start with you. Your one key takeaway.
I want to say the future has to be inclusive, not that it will be on its own. And we as women leaders, we have the opportunity to drive change. Let's do that. Let's create that network that can drive change.
Thank you, Ellie. Moya.
I think, my takeaway here is that, we've come a long way. There's more work to be done, but, I think we have to take the bull by the horns and just make it happen. And, you go, girl, and deliver.
Thank you. Nina.
Yeah, so I would encourage everyone to try to support each other as much as possible. The reason why I'm actually on this panel is because Michelle G from Women in Automotive Tech recommended me. So for that, I'm immensely grateful. So I think there are ways, big and small, for us to amplify each other's voice, specifically in meetings, right? If a woman is speaking, try to amplify that woman's voice in those meetings. If you're in a leadership position, push for gender equality from the top. Try to establish something like akin to a Rooney Rule, where for all open positions, women and people of color have to be considered. And I think, as much as we can do to support each other via networking, via helping each other along the way, recommending folks for positions, leadership otherwise, as well as speaking positions, it'll really go help a long way to help with this, for lack of a better word, this network effect, I guess. I can't believe I'm using this. But I have noticed that because now there's more emphasis on, at least in the VC community, more women investors, more women funds, then I now have an opportunity to potentially be on boards and be on more speaking opportunities. So to the extent that we can help support this, let's do what we can to push the ball forward.
I could not agree with you more. Here in Ottawa, we have something called SheBoot, which is looking at the investment challenge that women founders face from both sides, needing more women angels in our community and educating and helping to equip more women founders to be investment ready. Ellie is one of the participants from our inaugural cohort. Big shout out to my colleagues, Jennifer and Julia, who are the co-founders of that program. Amy McLeod, key takeaway.
Oh, there we go. I'm just so inspired by this conversation that I've been taking notes for myself. I loved what Ellie said earlier. Gender is an asset. For the first time in my career, our gender is an asset in the workplace, and the numbers don't support that. But for all of the reasons that we've just talked about, there has been a sea change. There is a need to embrace and involve women in business. in a way that there hadn't been 15 years ago. And we need to grab hold of that and set our expectations against that and not be afraid to ask for that. So my takeaway for this, one practical thing that we can all do is go back into our organizations, ask the question, doesn't matter what level you're at. I was inspired by a young woman that I interviewed for a role a couple months ago. She came in and she said, Amy, you need to tell me what the numbers of your women in your organization are. Because she expected something from me in that regard. And I was so impressed and inspired by that I went to our VP of HR and I said, you got to, like I hadn't asked it, what's the data? Give me the data. Tell me what we're doing. Are we doing enough? Are we losing women in COVID? Like, go in and ask your organization what's going on in your organization if you don't know, and set the expectation that we need to do better. That can happen at any level. And for those of us that are women leaders in our organizations, if an employee comes to you and asks you for that data, you bulldog it. You go get it, make sure that you get that data. It starts a conversation. It starts a thought process inside the organization. It starts creating an expectation that our employees, current and potential, expect us to be thinking and doing more than we are today. And that's my hope, is that the shoe gets on the other foot and that bottoms up pressure drives us the next mile down the road.
Benchmarking and measurement is absolutely, I cannot agree with you more. Lisa, it is over to you for our final takeaway for today.
Yes, Amy, I absolutely loved that. I think as leaders and women, we really need to use our voice and our platforms within our own organizations and in our own network. We need to bring awareness to gender equality, the impact it has on our economies, and I urge everyone to get out there, tweet, post, go on LinkedIn. Like Nina said, we need to bring other women up, make those recommendations if you have them, get more women on panels like this or panels within your industry. And Sonia, thank you so much for allowing us to have that voice with you. I really appreciate it.
It has been such an honor to work with champions who are truly elevating women, not just within your sectors, but within your communities. You are joined by three people who helped to create this panel today, and Michelle G, already noted by Nina. Michelle Avery, who joins us from the World Economic Forum. She has been a huge champion. We're very grateful. And my dear friend, Kathy Hogan from OceansAdvance, Executive Director. Thank you all for championing this cause. Solange, thank you for allowing us to be here today. Economic empowerment is something we're very passionate about, and we fully support your vision, mission, and mandate. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you all for being here.
Well, Sonia, thank you so much. I mean, we could never thank you enough for the work that you do, but I'm incredibly grateful that every year you continue to elevate the standards and the impeccable speakers that we get. You know, I was sipping here in my Elevate mug and listening, and I was sucking it all in, but then the way they started giving all this advice, then I started taking notes, just like Amy was saying it. I think there's so much takeaway from here, and we will continue to amplify, but I love the theme that has consistently been coming through the last 3 days, which is, as women, we need to elevate our voices, we need to support one another, and we need to make sure that we are amplifying each and everyone's voice, which is exactly what you do, Sonia. So on behalf of Elevate International, we thank you, and we thank the support of Invest Ottawa.
Thank you so much, Solange. Congratulations on an incredible event.
Thank you.